Okay, welcome to OECD Digital Education Outlook Conference. This session is developing Gen AI tools that keep teachers' agency. Today we have three speakers, Butulu Kuklova from UCL, and Inge Molenar, and Paraskevi Tutali from Radboud University. And Martin Henley will serve as our discussant. Yeah, so mic is yours, Matulu.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brian. Let me very quickly share my screen, if I may. Brilliant. Can you confirm that you are seeing now the screen with the slides, not the
Yes,
note?
yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Mutlu Kukrova, and today I will be talking briefly about the chapter that I have written for the...
Mutlu, could you change for you? We can see your notes. Could you just change your viewing option to perfect? Thank you.
Is this better? Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for the note. Yeah. So today I will be briefly talking about the chapter that I have written for the Digital Education Outlook 2026. And the chapter essentially covers a conceptual framework for teacher AI teaming. It aims to highlight the potential challenges that generative AI technologies might put to teacher agency and proposes alternative pathways on the design and development of AI technologies that would allow opportunities for higher teacher agency. So the chapter essentially first problematizes the way that we are currently performance measuring AI technologies, the way that we benchmark AI models. And it proposes that in AI field, oftentimes AI models are benchmarked against their performance of completing a particular task. And there is indeed huge amount of development in the field that shows that AI models can perform on certain benchmarking tasks, expert human baselines. And oftentimes, the tasks in which we are measuring the performance of AI is also increasing. So these days, we are doing benchmarking on tasks like answering PhD level science questions, and recent large language models are performing very well in these increasingly difficult tasks. But what this kind of benchmarking does not tell us at all is this idea of whether the use of AI actually helps people become more capable when they're working with them to complete these tasks. So it proposes an alternative positioning to AI benchmarking, highlighting that we need actually benchmarks in AI in education that measures whether AI improves human capability over time. And there is indeed some sense of expected correlation between the technical superiority of these models in terms of their intelligence to complete these tasks, but their technical superiority does not directly mean that they will also be able to help humans achieve particular tasks and help humans complete their tasks with the goal of improving human competence. So it argues that in AI, progress is often defined by automating tasks by once performed by humans, but proposes that in AI in education, we need a paradigm shift that is looking at instead how do we design human AI systems that increase human competence rather than displacing it. The first conceptual proposal it puts forward is these three conceptualizations of AI in education. And it says that oftentimes AI is currently used for automating particular human tasks to replace these tasks. And this is considered as the replacement paradigm in which we use highly automated AI models with low human control and low human agency. It says that we could instead think about the complementarity paradigm in which we use AI models in human AI interaction, and through this interaction, we could try to change human representation of thought. And that would be the complementarity paradigm. It argues that we could also think about human AI interaction within the synergy paradigm, in which the goal is to build human AI system where this cognition and control are distributed across human and AI agents. And then the competence is emerging at the system level rather than looking at the competence of each agent alone per se. So in terms of the outcome evaluations, the dependent variables on these three paradigms would indicate that in the replacement paradigm, you would expect human plus AI to achieve performance that is superior to the human, but in the long term, by time, human competence to either flatten or decrease due to this replacement. In the complementarity paradigm, you would expect human plus AI performance to achieve better performance than human alone. And also you would expect human competence by time to increase. And in the synergistic interaction paradigm, the expectation would be human AI performance to be superior to the maximum of human or AI performance alone. And you would expect by time human competence and AI competence through these interactions to increase. Currently, many human AI and teacher AI interactions appear to be clustered in the replacement paradigm. And this replacement paradigm is not necessarily always bad in the sense that it could lead to particular efficiency gains. The chapter covers a few pieces of these recent emerging studies, but I put here one randomized control trial from the UK that looks at the teachers who are using a generative AI versus those who are not using generative AI in their lesson preparation tasks. And it shows that indeed teachers who are using generative AI can save up to 31% in lesson preparation time. But it also shows that there is no statistically significant difference in terms of the quality of the resources that the teachers are creating in both conditions. Those who are using AI and those who are not using generative AI appear to create equal quality resources. Again, from a mathematical representation point of view, that would indicate that in this replacement paradigm, you can see that performance-wise, you can achieve productivity gains, but that doesn't mean that the teacher competence will increase by time. So it argues that the current most teacher AI use appears to cluster in the replacement paradigm, and the chapter provides some evidence from recent survey studies in teacher declared use cases, but also more recent evaluations of the generative AI tools, looking at the actual behavioral interactions of the teachers with these generative AI, indicating that most use cases cluster in this replacement paradigm, which can be helpful for productivity gains, but might actually leave teacher competence flat or declining. And then it proposes a 5-level teacher AI teaming, essentially raising the question that if currently most interactions are within the replacement paradigm, how do we move towards these high teacher agency generative AI interactions, towards complementarity and synergy potentially? And obviously, creating teacher AI systems that are providing complementarity is a very complex space, because the extent to which a teacher AI interaction will lead to complementarity would be influenced by particular human competence associated variables. Teachers' existing prior knowledge, their current skills, beliefs, experiences would have an impact on the extent to which a system will lead to complementarity. But there are also factors that are associated with the AI system designs, in the way that we are designing and developing these models, in the way that we are creating the interfaces, the way that we use the data in the training of these models. And the chapter that I have written is mainly focusing on the AI system design. How do we actually change variables within the AI system design category that would help us increase the likelihood of achieving complementarity? And in the chapter, there is a running example of one particular use case of a complex AI system. So you can imagine an AI system that collects various modalities of data, multimodal data, to diagnose and detect and then create particular feedback opportunities to teachers on students' collaborative interactions. Of course, talking about complementarity in these very complex pedagogical tasks is very difficult. So it also argues that we need to start thinking about the task specificity of the complementarity discussion. So it runs on this example of feedback creation for collaborative learning tasks for teachers. And it argues that at any given moment of teacher-AI interaction for the specific task of feedback creation in collaborative learning activities, there could be at least 5 different levels of teacher-AI teaming. It shows that some of these interactions can be transactional, in which the teacher requests a particular action to be completed by the model, and model provides responses. It can be situational, in which the AI model aims to give situational awareness to the teacher, and teacher still makes the final pedagogical decisions. It can be operationals, in which the teacher is able to make particular edits on the parameters, thresholds, criteria that the AI models are using to generate the feedback on collaborative learning. So the model can be used to operationalize teacher experience and professional knowledge. It can be practical in the sense that the AI model can learn from specific edits the teachers are making, and then converge towards the requirements and needs of a particular teacher through these interaction analysis. Or it can be synergistic in the sense that both teachers and AI can co-learn through their interactions. And through these interactions, the learning happens for structuring the teacher's tacit knowledge in their interactions. And in AI, it happens through learning from the teacher's edits in order to be able to optimize for a particular solution that is more aligned with the needs of the teachers. This is very abstract, so for the last couple of minutes of my allocated time, I'm going to give this example of how these 5 different levels of teaming that is proposed in the chapter could look like in one particular task of generating feedback for collaborative learning activities for teachers. So in the transactional teaming, you can think about the teacher requesting system to process multiple modalities of data and generate particular feedback. And then the system automatically generates feedback, and teacher makes a decision whether this feedback should be sent to the students or not. So the role of the AI is to create and deliver feedback, and the role of the teacher is to be able to kind of be the gatekeeper, judging whether AI-generated content is good enough or not. Competence growth in this kind of interaction is expected to be minimal because this is mainly from the tool use of the teacher, and there is no longitudinal interaction per se. It's very transactional. In the situational teaming, you can think about the same system is generating the feedback, but in addition to the feedback it generates, it also provides particular visualizations, insights, in order to be able to improve the teacher's situational awareness of what kind of data actually led to this specific feedback to be created by AI. So the teacher has this capability of interpreting the contextual variables that lead to the feedback and make the decision whether this feedback is good enough to be sent or not based on this increased situational awareness. Again, the competence growth from the teacher's side in this situational teaming is expected to be higher than transactional because the system provides more awareness to the teacher. In the operational teaming, you can take this system to the next level. And in addition to the situational awareness and the drafted feedback, you can give the teacher the opportunity to be able to adjust particular parameters on how much silence time is actually not good enough and how much individual interaction, how much mutuality in students' interactions can lead to what type of feedback is decided by the teachers themselves. So the model provides these opportunities of operationalizing teacher input. And competence growth is expected to be higher in this kind of operational teaming because the teachers need to develop their operational AI literacy to think what kind of feedback, what kind of thresholds should be operationalized with AI systems. And it also helps teachers to formalize their pedagogical judgment with the help of these AI models. In the practical teaming, you can think about the feedback is being generated by the AI system, but it is not left as it is. And the system allows editing opportunities to the teacher. So once the teacher starts making edits on the initially proposed feedback, the system can track what kind of changes the teachers are making to the initially proposed feedback, and then learns from these edits to be able to improve its internal model as the AI system to converge towards this idea of generating feedback that is more aligned with the teacher's needs. And in the synergistic teaming, the idea is that the feedback is not really created or initiated by AI system or by teacher alone, but the idea is that the feedback is co-created, co-constructed with these two agents that have different kind of capabilities, the human teacher as an agent, an AI agent. So you think about a system where the initial feedback is proposed, and then in the next parallel line, AI agent having a discussion with the teacher about what could potentially be improved and pushing back on particular teacher recommendations based on existing learning sciences principle. So this idea of AI agent and the teachers interacting in these bidirectional learning spaces is the essence of synergistic teaming. Also, the chapter concludes that as the current literature reviews indicate, the synergistic human AI teaming and teacher AI teaming is largely absent in teacher-facing AI systems, but it also highlights that generative AI models provide significant opportunities for us to move towards these synergistic teaming levels. And I guess the key message of the chapter is that if we continue optimizing for better AI models for replacement, it's very likely that we will be observing flattening or potential decrease in teacher competencies. And it argues that we should instead, or at least in addition to looking at better AI models, we should be looking at how do we design teacher AI systems that would lead to more synergistic interactions as part of higher degrees of teacher agency in teacher AI teaming. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Matulu. Oh, yes. I mean, AI must be, I mean, not must be, like it's idea to AI could be synergistic with the teachers was a very difficult goals to achieve. And thank you for providing a conceptual idea, conceptual framework with that, how we develop the AI, how AI could collaborate with our teachers. It's very helpful session. Yes. next session, we have two presenters, Evi Topali and Inge Molenar. Who gonna go first? You guys can share the slide and floor is yours.
Yeah. Effie will share the slides and I will start off with our shared presentation. So thank you very much for the invitation to give the presentation and engage in this. So as you can see already, Moodloop, Avi and I are also working together in the Tycho project, which is the teacher AI complementarity. So I cannot agree more with Moodloop's final words that this is not about replacements. This is really about developing human AI teaming in such a way that we allow teachers to develop agency. Now, the work that we're presenting here is Chapter 8 in the Digital Education Outlook, and it stems from the work that Evie and I do in the National AI and Education Center of the Netherlands, in which we were working on a project together with teachers to see how generative AI, a general purpose AI in this case, can be transitioned into becoming an educational AI. The general purpose AI versus educational AI is a systematic difference that has been highlighted throughout the Digital Education Outlook. And it's interesting to see that this awareness of the difference between these two layers has become more apparent, not only in the Digital Education Outlook, but also in the updated European guidelines for teachers using AI. So it's important to realize that general purpose AI solutions such as generative AI hold promise, but also require a lot of professional development from teachers to be used well in educational settings. And that is because they are not designed to support learning and teaching. They lack a number of important features. For instance, they do not have enough knowledge about the contextual models in education, so they are not aware of the curricula nor of the educational context in which they are being used. As I said before, they are not built on learning and teaching models. They're not designed for learning and teaching, and as such, they're not using the knowledge that we have about learning and teaching processes. Next, they're also not built on learner models, and in such they have a hard time personalizing to individual learners' needs. And finally, they put pressure on teacher autonomy in a multiple of different ways. So our chapter really drives towards the question, how can we design a general purpose AI and transition it into an educational AI? And this work has been done together with teachers. Now, as Moodloop already outlined in his presentation as well, most of the work looking at the usage of AI is often looking at a replacement perspective of AI in which automation is high. We have always stressed at the National AI and Education level that center that it's also very important to see that AI can be used for augmentation. So not necessarily for automation, but really to support teachers to do better in particular educational contexts. And at the moment we move to augmentation, teachers are actually helped by AI, and this does not necessarily have to reduce autonomy. So there is what we call a automation augmentation paradox. We tend to believe that when we start using AI, automation is immediately a result and autonomy is under pressure. This does not have to be the case, but it often happens, as we just saw in the presentation from Moodloop. Now, in order to understand well what the role of autonomy is, and also what the role of AI, the task division between AI and the teachers is, we've used the 6-layer model for the distinction between within lesson activities of artificial intelligence and education. And this very much focuses on the task division during teaching and learning. But it's not only during teaching and learning, the autonomy is actually designed. So it's important to look a little bit further than that. And this is what this chapter is outlining. Beyond the activities during learning, there's also 2 important activities before learning. The first one is the fact that teachers can be involved in the actual design of the AI solutions. And in co-design with teachers, it allows us to voice their needs and in the development of the tool. So that's one important time where autonomy can be increased. Another important time is at the instructional cycle. Teachers they plan their lessons, they determine how they're teaching prior to the actual teaching activities. At that time, teachers can also determine what the role of the AI is during the actual lesson and co-orchestrate this ability together with the artificial intelligence solutions. Now, Evie will take over and outline what we did in this project.
Perfect. Can you just confirm me that you can hear me well?
We hear you.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, then the question is how we could understand, study, and see the different how the different levels of teacher autonomy and control depicts in the lesson planning and in the tool design. In order to do so, we follow a teacher-centered approach, design-based research, where the whole approach poses the teachers not as end users, but as architects of the tools at the center of the solutions. We started analyzing and understanding the teacher problems in the time of using generative AI. We co-designed, co-developed with teachers some solutions. We did some iterative testing with lesson planning, and we had some reflections. Now, all this process has been followed and intentionally focused on the tool co-design, but then during phase 3, it was where the magic happened, and then we saw the importance of giving the teachers the flexibility to make intentional decisions during the orchestration phase, the instructional phase, as Inge said, in order to be able to decide how the generative AI can be used more wisely according to their pedagogical beliefs. In the first phase, we collected teacher concerns regarding the use of generative AI, teachers that currently are using generative AI for their lessons, and we saw that the main concern regarded student cognitive offloading and the negative impact in general key performances of the learners, like cognitive development and non. The second one regarded student over-reliance on the AI-generated output, risking their critical thinking. And the last one was a concern regarding their own role, teacher's role, in the process of teaching and learning. And it had to do with the lack of control in the teaching process. Now, teachers helped us a little bit decodify what the control means, and controls for them means to be able to monitor how the students are engaging with generative AI, to be able to configure different aspects, different features of the generative AI tools according to their pedagogical decisions, and then to decide how they would like to allocate, to divide their tasks between having them, the teachers, the control during the lesson enactment, or the AI. Moodle before used an example about a feedback tool. So in this case, in the decide process, for example, if we use the same example of feedback, it could be a tool where the teachers decide when they would like a generative AI tool to take control over which feedback messages and for what depth, for example. Now, in the second phase, we translated this concern in a set of requirements of a different tools, a set of tools that the teachers would like in order to be more equipped during the learning process. And we allocated these requirements in time in the learning preparation and learning enactment. We start with a tool co-design that happens way before the lesson. Then we come to the lesson orchestration, that is the instructional cycle that we discussed before. And then during the lesson, during the class, it is a lesson enactment. In this line, we identified different requirements. The first of all, during the tool co-design, regarded the teachers to be able to co-create, to decide with the researchers the features that they would like for the GenAI tools and co-create with them to have their voices over there. During the lesson orchestration, they would like and they need the possibility to configure, fine-tune these features according to their own needs. and then as well to decide how they would like the GenAI tool to act during the lesson, and divide the pedagogical tasks between them and the AI. And during the lesson enactment, the main requirement regarded monitoring the student AI engagement and interaction, and as well decided different task division between GenAI and themselves on the fly. Our vision is the following. If we see over here the figure and we think the different moments that I discussed before. So during the tool design, we have the teachers that together with the researchers, they decide what they would like to have from the GenAI tools, like what options, what features, what possibilities. During the lesson, the instructional cycle, the lesson co-orchestration, they decide how all these features and the possibilities can be used and when, at what moments. And then during the lesson enactment, they can be, as the main figure that we can see here, they can choose the different tools according to their own pedagogical decisions. We created three different prototypes that I'm going to explain briefly over here, that they aim to satisfy the different requirements that I discussed before. The first one has to do with teachers being able to configure, to set pedagogical boundaries to avoid students' over-reliance. And over here you can see a teacher dashboard, let's say, where the teachers set different rules of engagement for the students while the students are going to use generative AI. And the teachers set these aspects before the students log in, and they can set, for example, they configure different prompting limit for the students, word answer, output length, in terms of minimum and maximum words, hallucinations if they would like to foster students' critical thinking, and as well they can set the level of feedback of the output that the generative AI tool can give to the students in terms of providing direct answers or hints in order to guide a little bit more, direct the learning process and foster the critical thinking for the students and avoid the over-reliance. The second prototype had to do with the teachers being able to monitor the interaction, the engagement between the GenAI and the students. And over here you can see different moments where the teachers can check, can visualize who is using generative AI and how often, for example. And as well, they can check potential moments of misuse, of abuse of AI, of copy-paste moments. And all this idea aims to transform whatever at the moment for the teachers works as a black box to become a diagnostic set for the teachers in order to be able to act accordingly with more personalized interventions. And the last prototype is related with the task division, where the teachers is a feedback tool, where the teachers during the lesson orchestration, they decide different, they co-create with the GenAI tool different feedback interventions of different timing, different focuses, different depth, for example, hints or direct interventions. And then the students during the lesson enactment, they receive the feedback. And the students, the teachers have decided before which messages they would like the GenAI tool to be delivered to the students and which messages they would like to be in control of. Now, wrapping up and coming again to the question that Inge posed at the beginning and our own internal doubt on how we can transform and transition general purpose GenAI tools that are currently used by the teachers to more educational tools that are going to satisfy the teachers' needs. Our answer to that is setting teachers at the center of tool co-design and co-orchestration processes in order to consider their pedagogical values, their ethical considerations, and as well to support them make intentional decisions in all this process. We retrieved different requirements and we tried to satisfy these requirements with different prototypes in order to boost and support teacher autonomy, having in mind that teacher autonomy in general, for our understanding, is a dynamic process, not a static, that is involved in different moments during the learning process. And what we try to address are the key limitations presented at the beginning. For example, the lack of contextualization, where in our case, we collaborated with the teachers in order to align the different prototypes with the lesson plans, the teacher designs, and the classroom activities. The limited personalization, where with the different prototypes, what we try to do is to enable the teachers to monitor the student progress and as well to support more adaptive and personalized interventions according to the teacher judgment. Then about the weak pedagogical foundation, at the tool co-design, we attempt to align the prototypes with pedagogical theories in terms of learning and of feedback in concretely. And at the end, addressing the threats to the teacher autonomy, what we, like our general goal is to enhance teacher ability to be able to act consciously and fine-tune the different tools according to their personal and professional judgment and values. Thank you very much for your time. We are here for a further discussion.
Thank you. Great. The authors propose a way to be like this AI could be more successful. Teacher must be engaged from the beginning, right? Designing stage and the orchestrating stage. I think it's a good propose to think about our educators how to develop how to use the AI. Thank you very much. Next is Martin Henny to discuss two presentations.
Thanks, Shunchul. And I'm Martin Henry. I work for Education International, and we are the International Teachers Union Federation. So we represent about 32 million teachers in about 179 countries, and we have about 380 members. And we work across from early childhood to higher education. So we're working at all the levels in education. And it's interesting hearing the presentations, actually, how we work around our slicing and dicing, because being an old secondary school English teacher myself, what happens in the secondary school English classroom or the drama classroom isn't necessarily the same as what happens in the primary school classroom. But we talk about AI as if all teachers approach it and all teachers deal with it in the same way, which I know our authors are well aware that that's not the case. But I think it's worth our interrogating a little how it is when we set up frameworks and ways of thinking about it, that it interacts and falls down on particular teachers in particular places. And I think it was Inga spoke about this, but the contextualization aspect is absolutely critical, that if we're not contextual to the experience and the understanding of the teacher, we're going to miss some of those ideas. And I think as we're asking the questions about what the digital outlook can do for you, and what the digital outlook can do for the teacher, it's about thinking about how we can jump over some of these questions. And I think you've talked in some shapes within the three presentations that we can look at in a bit more depth. While the chapters are dealing with different things, they have a central place for the professional autonomy of teachers. And why is professional autonomy so important? Well, it was a central question that came up in the recent ISTP meetings that we had in Estonia. And David Edwards, who's my boss, will be speaking in an hour or so in the featured session about how some of these things were worked through in terms of AI and its impact on teachers. But professional autonomy there was one of the critical themes of what they were looking at. AI was another. And I think the interaction between those two is at the existential end of what's happening in education at the moment. And I think our authors have been quite clear about the importance of that. If we give up professional autonomy for teachers, we got education. And if we're clear about how we respond to technological developments in a way that center the professional autonomy of teachers, we have a chance of finding a successful and symbiotic approach, which will mean that it's smoother and clearer. And I think Mutlu talked in his chapter about the need to harness AI, but maintain teachers' agency, rights, and professional integrity. You were quite clear about pointing that out, Mutlu, which I appreciated. It's easier said than done, and he does go to some pains to lay out a framework that will guide this engagement. I do want to critically engage with some of this. Introducing AI into teaching can't be some efficiency drive comparable to bringing robots into factories or computers into offices, because as many historians have pointed out, this not only failed to reduce workloads, it increased them, but it also had a negative effect on jobs. So that replacement strand and how we might go about swapping a teacher for a machine, I think we found during COVID is impossible. Because once you're in a place where you're decontextualized and dehumanized from the relationships in education, and it's funny that you started with that chat about COVID, it was the human contact and the human relationship that warms our experience of development in education. And I think that all three of you tried to work out how a way to contextualize that warmth of human relationship. And I do want to keep that at the front and center of what we're looking at. The framework builds towards more inclusive ways of going about it. And I think you do try and do this, Mutlu, make it inclusive. So through situational, via practical, and into more synergistic ways of teaching, I couldn't help but get pulled back to Bloom's taxonomy of the cognitive domain, which I grew up with as a young teacher. And it was a favorite of mine at Teachers College, where students move from understanding and comprehension, which AI can already do, towards evaluation and synthesis. And you're sort of doing a bit of the same thing, taking us towards that evaluation and synthesis. AI can do that sometimes, but in my experience, it doesn't do it very well. You can ask it to write you notes on a meeting you were in about AI, and it will write very positive notes about AI when actually everyone was really critical. So, how it spins the story, I think, is something we all have to keep our eyes on. Mutlu keeps the human in the picture as well and reminds us that pushing beyond the edges of a teacher's competence requires a competent teacher. And I think that's central to this whole theory. And a competent teacher requires the pay and conditions to make that possible, and the professional learning and development to keep them current and engaged and aware of what it is in the developments around them. And I do want to remind us all of that we've got to have classrooms where this can happen. We've got to have class sizes where we're able to move around and do the things that are necessary. And we've got to do these things all at the same time. I'm aware of the time, so I do want to keep moving here. It's clear from all our speakers that the teacher needs to be in the driving seat, deciding on the tasks, reflecting on the specificities of the curriculum. I thought Inga's points about this were absolutely critical, with the history curriculum coming into sharp relief, and how sources, as you point out in the article, get forgotten by AI, and the actual testing of the critical nature of sources. Well, that's a critical historical ability, and we don't want to lose that by going to a new technological model. AI has its cheerleaders and its naysayers, but we will never get the best out of it until we approach it with our critical faculties intact. And thank you, all three of you, for making sure that you do this. The no-lie model's an interesting one because it involves co-construction with AI by design. And Wayne Holmes, who I've done a bit of work with, and I know you reference in your article, talks a lot about this as well. The reference to ChatGPT and Claude caught my eye as well, because Claude was a little bit of a negative figure for us in the union world a few weeks ago, and now is sort of moved quite rapidly towards one of some ethical positioning. So it reminds us how quickly things change in the world of AI, and I think that we've got to be nimble enough to respond to that. Stripping out the curriculum and learner knowledge is deeply problematic, and I think you point that out. that you've got to contextualize the way that we're working within the classroom and within the experiences we have. I want to point you to one of our members, the AFT in America, have an academy where they're working with Microsoft, OpenAI, and others to do training modules with teachers. They're working with the big tech companies. Now, that's okay if you're in the USA. What do you do if you're in Slovenia and you want to do the same thing? You've got different level of access. So I think we need to think about how we provide those opportunities for teachers. You've got Nolai in Holland, which we see as a very positive model where teachers and unions and everybody can work together in a way that co-constructs solutions. We need to create that in every environment. So how do we make sure that's going to cover away from the richer countries and the bigger countries and towards more different models? I just want to finish on the big issue, which our members always raise with us, and that's the one of sort of AI and neo-colonialism. How do we ensure that as we do this, that access to the models and the ideas that are coming at us are broad enough, wide enough, and varied enough to reflect the diversity of our students? I hope that gives you a little bit to think about. I know we're running out of time, and maybe we have some time for some questions. Thanks, Shunchul.
Sure. We have about 10 minutes. So, and also take a look at it, look at the chat box. So there are some questions so that you guys can respond both like the questions from the audience and also the points that Martin discussed. So why don't you Mutulu start to respond?
Thanks, Brian. And thanks, Martin, for valuable reflections on the chapters. I think the first question that I can see in the chat is pointed to me, and it says how to bring the framework that we discuss in the chapter to schools and higher education. There is a long way to go. Yeah, I would agree with the fact that currently there is indeed a bit of a gap between what we are proposing at a more theoretical and conceptual level to what is happening in the ground in most schools across many OECD countries and across the globe, to be fair. But I have to say, I think although the change is slow, the change is indeed happening, and I can see many examples in which schools are now realizing the potential of generative AI technologies and trying to take more systematic changes towards operationalizing some of these conceptual propositions. And of course, to me, the first starting point is to have a very clear chat about in a given daily professional life of a teacher, what kind of tasks that teachers are currently engaged in and spend their time on are indeed potentially the kind of tasks that are not necessarily associated with pastoral care, not necessarily associated with pedagogical support, but more associated with administrative tasks of daily life. And think about what is the potential of current state of the field generative AI to help with these kind of tasks that might be conducive to automation. And once you start doing this, you easily realize, or very quickly realize, that actually a lot of these administrative tasks are somehow associated with some other aspects of pastoral care or pedagogical care. And you realize that there are not many tasks that you could automate with the help of AI, but there might be indeed certain tasks that could be supported with generative AI in the replacement paradigm for efficiency gains, particularly for those teachers who currently have the competencies. They are experienced teachers, but they are engaged in various monotonous tasks that takes significant amount of time in their professional life. So what I would like to say is that a lot of this discussion about the replacement, complementarity, and synergy is very much teacher competence specific and very much task specific discussions. So in schools, the first thing to do is to profile these clusters of different teacher competencies and think about what particular tasks currently the teachers are engaged in, and then map these into the expected type of tasks that could be potentially replaced or should be complemented or should be led for synergistic interactions. Sometimes when I give these kind of talks, people live with the impression that as if we need to aim for all teacher tasks to be moved towards these synergistic interactions. But I don't really argue for this. To me, a lot of these synergistic interactions are very difficult and they require significant teacher competence, as has been highlighted. They require a significant cognitive load from teachers' point of view. But there are certain tasks that we just do not have the luxury of not engaging in these kind of synergistic interactions in which teacher competence also evolves. So I hope that gives an initial starting point, being looking at the current teacher competencies, existing professional development opportunities in schools, and identifying a task-specific map of the teacher's professional activities, then start thinking about which ones could be complemented, which ones could be synergistically augmented, and which ones can potentially be automated with the help of AI.
Thank you. Inge?
I can go for the next question because it matches with what Mutlu said. There is a question about if the tools can take, like, what type of data do we need in order to send, create personalized activities for learners, and what type of data do we want? And it's a good question because it bridges with what Mutlu said about the tasks, and we need to focus on the tasks. I think not only in generative AI, but generally in learning analytics as well in this field, many of the tools most of the tools focus on the student answers, like the output itself. And I think now with the generative AI, it's the time, because the adoption is very rapid, it's the time to focus on the type of tasks and the type of creating tools that they can grasp the instructional design. They can somehow depict the learning objectives, the types of the tasks, how the sequence of the tasks is associated, the student socio-emotional development as well, somehow, if the teachers could report. So we need tools that they need to take this information, and because the question is how this can happen, because it sounds big, this is what we try to do now in OLAI, by having different tools and thinking how we can integrate different frameworks, competency frameworks, the models, the curriculum models and on. But because probably all this information comes from the teachers many times, we want them there and they don't know how to report. Probably as well we need tools that they have a structured process that they can elicit this information. So they can help teachers to report their knowledge and elicit all this knowledge, like student skills, important aspects that probably as researchers we don't consider, but they understand the classroom and they consider. So we need this type of tools that they will consider instructional design, but at the same time they will support teachers who do not have exactly the knowledge on how to report this information, to elicit this information through fixed processes and protocols.
I'm sorry, I'm muted. Yes. Do you guys want? We have like 1 minute. Is there anybody who would like to address the question from the chat box?
Yeah, I'll have a go at this one from Turkey. I think that the perception is very important. We see in France that 9% of teachers say they engage with AI, whereas in Vietnam it's 99%, according to Thales. That definitely the way you construct that relationship, and I think what they're doing with Nolai in Holland is a good example, that if you construct the relationship in a place where there's some shared autonomy and shared decision making with the teachers, you've got a better chance of keeping that perception positive. And a final word is, as we're getting teachers to do all these things and give the feedback and everything else, let's create some time in the curriculum and the day for them to do it, please. Thank you.
Okay, so I think there are still more questions from the audience, but feel free to email our presenters that we can address your question.